Warning: Josh is not an expert in any of the crap he talks about. He simply uses his head and does a lot of research so you, the audience, don't have to. Keep in mind, he doesn't know everything, so take the he says with a grain of salt.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast that'll change the world. I'm your host, Mr. Quarantino, and if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscription button and notification bell so you can get updates on future videos. Anyways, let's get started. So, as the title mentions, today's episode is going to be talking about the U.S. economy, and the biggest question is the U.S. economy tanking? We're seeing a lot of red flags right now kind of going on all around, and there's a lot of different factors that coincide with the economy because it's such an unpredictable and confusing mess of information. But I'm ultimately going to be talking about what's going wrong within the U.S. economy, and I'm also going to talk about the cyber attack that actually happened and the shortages that resulted across the East Coast. And to go and get started with that one, more in particular, it was a cyber attack on the Colonial Pipelines, which stretches across the East Coast, going up towards like New York City and whatnot. It kind of goes up and down. But essentially what happened is that it was a cyber attack or a ransomware attack by a cyber criminal gang called DarkSide. And this was according to the FBI. This led to the oil pipelines to be shut down until ransom was paid. DarkSide also stole 100 gigabytes worth of data from the Colonial Pipelines and threatened to release data on the internet if the ransom wasn't paid. And ultimately, Colonial Pipelines did cave, and they actually paid the online gang DarkSide $5 million worth of Bitcoin, which is a shit ton of money. And let's go and start off by taking a look at what happened as a result of the cyber attack. So obviously, the biggest thing was the gas shortages. The gas shortages, you clearly saw prices were spiking up. There was only a limited amount of fuel to be obtained. And then what happened as a result of that is panic buying. You saw people further exacerbate the shortages by being complete imbeciles and hoarding gas. Like, literally, there are memes and pictures circulating on Facebook, Twitter, everywhere of all these and I'm going to say too, all these idiots that are filling trash bags with gasoline, that are buying dozens of gas cans to fill up with gas, to getting the massive, 60, 80 gallon water tanks that are meant for like power washing or pressure washing, stuff like that. They're filling that with gasoline. And that is the dumbest thing to do. Why? Well, because what happened as a result of the panic buying, it further exacerbated the supply chain and it made the gas shortage only worse. So instead of the gas prices or the economy and the capitalist system naturally allowing the gas prices to level out based off of consumer demand with supply and demand, instead you saw basically a bunch of people completely abuse and just strain the system in the most illogical way. And I don't know if that made sense or not, but it's what also happened as a result of the gas shortages was also food shortages. So what you started seeing across the eastern states is that because there was no gas to be able to transport food, it led to limited resources being transported to the different grocery stores and all that stuff. And then on top of that, because then you had people becoming so super irrational that they're all thinking, oh, I gotta buy everything and hoard it all. So they start buying up all the food supplies. They start buying up even more gas and everything. It further exacerbates the gas supply chains. It further exacerbates the food chains because they're not able to meet with the demand. And honestly, a perfect example of this is the Arab oil embargo. The Arab oil embargo was a situation that happened during the Nixon administration when Richard Nixon had given aid to Israel. And OPEC, OPEC has basically an absolute monopoly over the world's oil supply. I think they own like over 70% of the world's oil supply chain. And this is primarily consisted of a lot of Middle Eastern countries, and a lot of these Middle Eastern countries within the OPEC system are not on the good side of the US and vice versa. And so what happened during the Arab oil embargo is that Richard Nixon provided aid to Israel during their wartime or whatever was going on back then. And in response to the aid, OPEC actually slapped the US with an embargo. And this ultimately caused the prices to skyrocket on gas, and it led to a bunch of mess and issues. And then because you had Richard Nixon, he tried to enact a type of socialist principles in regards to fixed pricing. So he was trying to manually set the prices for gasoline rather than the economy allow it to fluctuate on its own. He was manually setting the prices, and then he was limiting, like, okay, you can only get gas on these days, other days, stuff like that. And that was the issue with government overreach. But ultimately what happened during the Arab oil embargo is gas shortages. Prices were starting to shoot up. You had people in lines trying to get as much gas as they can. And then you also saw people stealing each other's gas. The gas stations during the Arab oil embargo, which is like, if I remember correctly, during the 70s, it was the mid to late 1900s where this took place, but you saw people resorting to criminalistic behavior by either siphoning gas from other people's gas tanks or just stealing it straight from the gas station. And it got so bad that they had to lock their gas tanks and lock the gas stations up so that way people aren't stealing it, but people were still breaking into it. But the direct comparison between the cyber attack and how society in those regions responded to the shortages versus the Arab oil embargo is pretty spot on. We're seeing a historical reference with the Arab oil embargo where people became irrational and stupendously idiotic and decided to resort to panic buying and hoarding, which, guess what? When you panic buy and you hoard, a lot of the resources that you bought tends to go to waste. And that's what makes it even more dumb, and that's what creates even bigger issue. But you're seeing those two direct comparisons, and I guarantee, whether the news wants to cover or not right now because of there's so much media bias, I can guarantee that during these gas shortages across the eastern states, there were people that were siphoning gas, that were breaking into gas stations, doing whatever they can to get gas, maybe even getting in fistfights. We saw that happening during the pandemic over fucking toilet paper. Like, literally, I remember seeing on Facebook, there's a video of this chick who was getting in a fist fight with this mom and then her daughter, and the daughter was like, looked like she was in her 30s, but they were straight up getting in a fist fight because the mom and daughter had like 7 or 8 massive things of toilet paper and water, and just completely took what was left, and the other chick didn't have anything. They ended up getting a fist fight. But we're seeing those commonalities between the Arab oil embargo as well as what's happening now with the cyber attack. And by the way, this is being recorded May 17th, so and it'll probably be posted by the end of this week, so any changes will kind of fall out of that. But you're seeing how irrational people started behaving as well. And again, it creates a domino effect where the gas shortages then pertains to the food shortages as we have seen, and then it pertains to other issues in regards to, okay, how can people actually get to work? When gas shortages occur and people are hoarding the gas, it then exacerbates the people who are trying to act like proper, responsible individuals and are trying to get to work. So it creates a whole different mess. And because the economics is such a confusing and just all around messed up thing, there's so many factors there's so much that happens as a ripple effect from this one thing. But yeah, and so then what I also wanted to talk about in regards to the gas shortages and the food shortages is what should have been the appropriate response. Well, we know, for example, with the Arab oil embargo with Richard Nixon, when he tried to regulate gasoline as well as the prices, when consumers can be able to get gas and stuff like that, it didn't fucking work. It, in fact, only made the situation worse. Why? Because the government just isn't fully capable of handling issues like that. It's not so much as... It's like... Or, what was my point? It's not so much about what the government can do to help it. It's a matter of if they could actually do anything to help it. Because you saw with the Arab oil embargo, when the government stepped in to try to help things with the situation, only made the gas shortages worse. And of course, there could be different scenarios as well where some type of government hand can come in and actually provide benefit to the situation, but that depends on who is the one behind the government to fix the issues, because you have to look at the people behind it that are trying to influence it in which way. Are they going to try to use it to capitalize on their own agenda and make the situation worse, like during the Richard Nixon era? Or are they going to try to actually look at the issues, see what different problems are occurring, what stems from it, what could possibly happen, and what are the right steps to take in order to best get it to flow properly? And one of the books I recently finished was The American Government. Literally read it from front to back, fucking my brain fried from it. But it was talking about how the U.S. government literally has no fucking clue, no clue at all on how to properly and fully handle the economy, because it's such a confusing and multi-dimensional system that the government just isn't capable of handling. So the gas shortages and the food shortages, there's only so much that the government can do without there being too much overreach and restricting rights. So this falls on a societal issue in regards to the gas shortages and the food shortages. What should have been the appropriate response to do this? Well, the appropriate response to the gas shortages and the food shortages is to ration. You saw it during the Great Depression. You saw it during World War I and II as well. Historical factors of people rationing their food and their supplies in order for our soldiers overseas to be able to have those resources and supplies to defend our country and to protect us from what was going on back then. The rationing should have been the appropriate response, because what happens in a capitalistic system in regards to the shortages and the supply and demand is that basically in a capitalist economy, what happens is when the gas shortages occur and the food shortages occur, in order to accommodate the consumer demand, the prices must go up. Now, if people don't want the prices to go up and they don't want it to stay up, what do? You ration. You conserve what you get and you conserve what you have. So during the Arab oil embargo, one of the solutions to fixing the gas shortages then was to carpool, to conserve how often you go out and everything. And the government did try to go in and try to force people to control how much transportation occurs, which backfired because it's clear overreach. But the responsible end on society's part in this situation with the gas shortages and the food shortages is, rather than panic buying and hoarding the resources like a jackass, and I say that with genuine meaning, because when you hoard and you panic buy, you are putting others at risk, in the sense as you are restricting not only their supplies, but you are exacerbating the supply chain and could contribute to even further issues and more problems. So the appropriate response during the shortages is to ration. It is to conserve what you get and what you have. So, like, for example, with the toilet paper and with water, stores began restricting it to where you can only buy one per customer. So that's rationing in order to be able to accommodate and limit the consumer demand, so that way the supply can be able to match the demand. And then when the supply is able to match the demand, then you're able to see prices get better. You're seeing things resolve. So that it's what the people across the eastern states that were hoarding and panic buying all the gas and all the food and everything, what they should have done is that they should have, as I keep on saying, they should have rationed what they get, do the best that they can to conserve it, whether it's by limiting how much traveling you do, carpooling, stuff like that. By collectively as a society doing that, you're going to lower the consumer demand and allow the supply chain to build itself back up. Once the demand lowers and the supplies increases, well, what happens then is that the supply needs to be sold, or else the value is only going to diminish more and more and more. So when the supply is up here and the demand's down here, you're going to see the prices of the resources dwindle down until it's able to meet the consumer demand and what they're willing to pay for it. So if that would have been followed, which it's of course because of all the shit that goes on, you never know how long the rationing and stuff goes like that. So you have to be rational and logical human beings to be able to basically have common sense. Have common sense on, okay, how long is this going to go out? Look at what's going on around you and what's the best route to go. And what really sucks too, though, is that while there is a lot of good people, there's a lot of bad people too who like to take advantage of the system, and that's just an unfortunate truth. So this is especially when it comes to stuff like this, when you try to allow the government to step in and start to regulate too much of this stuff, first you have to raise the question of whether or not they have the authority to do so. If they do have the authority to do so, okay, what's the route to go and what is the most effective way to go? When you have government trying to come in and try to regulate this stuff, you start to deal with client politics where you have interest groups that are going to try to get their own agenda across going and everything. So it's whenever it comes to shortages, only more problems stem from more government overreach within the system, but more problems stem from society itself not handling the situation properly. So for the people that across the eastern states, I guarantee you, if they hadn't hoard or panicked or done all the panic buying with the gas and the food, the shortages would have been fixed and handled a lot quicker. Especially too because you saw Colonial Pipeline, they had to pay the $5 million ransom, and it's because their supplies were getting so exhausted for what they had that they had no choice. And the fact that you had people in society that was hoarding and panic buying so much gas, that only put Colonial Pipelines in a worse situation because their demand is only increasing. But crap, they have no product, they have no service to offer, so they're going to be losing money. And ultimately what happened as a result is that you had Colonial Pipeline cave to the cyber criminal gang and pay the $5 million. And what is that? What does paying the ransom and this whole situation mean for the rest of the country? Well, to simply put it, it means that the rest of this country can be at risk for the same exact thing. If it happened there on the East Coast, what do you think it's going to stop it from happening on the West? You saw Colonial Pipelines cave to dark side and pay the ransom in order to have their stuff brought back and to bring back the oil supply. Well, what if these other cyber criminal gangs or whomever else gets the idea to, let's do it again? So with that being said, this cyber attack and the shortages that occurred as a result of it showed a hole in our system in the sense of how our society and how our government will react to it. The way that it was handled in this situation was piss poor. Absolutely, because it became just nothing but a lose-lose situation. People weren't able to go to work because other people were buying up all the gas. People weren't able to get groceries because other people were buying up all the food and everything. Trucks couldn't even have gas to transport food and supplies to different stores and different locations, to different towns and different cities. So different towns and different cities were becoming more limited on resources, attributing to further shortages or exacerbating of what chains they have of supplies. And it's just a cycle of bullshit, and it's just a domino effect that occurs. So moving forward, the fact that this happened once means that it can happen again. So the appropriate response to something like this is brace for it. Obviously, there's only so much that can be controlled, and if it happens, it happens. There's only so much that we could do to stop it from happening. I worked in storage facilities, and a good point that an old client of mine actually made is that it doesn't matter how much stuff you put in the way of a thief. All you're going to do is going to slow them down. They'll always find a way. Same with the cyber attack. They did this on the East Coast. Sorry, I'm having mush mouth. What do you think is going to stop them from doing it on the West Coast or finding a loophole or hole in the system or some type of back door? And so, with that being said, what should be the appropriate response next time when something like this happens? ration. So for example, if it hits the West Coast and it hits like California, Arizona, Nevada, and like all up and down the western states, what we should do as a result as a society, so that way we don't have to worry about too much government overreach for the irresponsibility, as a society we ration, we conserve how much we go out and such things, so forth. And of course this is asking a lot, because like it every to an extent, everybody has their right to live their own life and make their own choices. And anybody else trying to stop them in a sense of trying to restrict their rights to do it is absolutely wrong. So it is more so providing incentive in the act, like this is a temporary sacrifice to for all of us to later benefit all of us. And by the way, this is how majoritarian politics work. So if another cyber attack or another type of gas shortage happened on the western states, the responsible thing to do on the societal end is to ration and conserve how much gas we get and what transporting we do. On top of, and by doing that, we're not going to have so much of a concern or a fear of the gas shortage becoming too out of control, because we'll allow the supply to catch up with the demand. By lowering the demand, you're going to allow the prices to fluctuate from going high as a result of the shortage to going low, to it's accommodable for the average Joe to be able to get to point A to point B to their job or whatever. So you just ration, conserve, carpool, do now. And then if, for example, if a cyber attack happened on the West Coast and it also led to food shortages because the trucks couldn't transport the food and supplies, with the food shortages, the other responsible thing is to obviously ration what you get and obviously conserve what you get at home. So if, like with the toilet paper and water, you saw everybody during the pandemic hoard up all the toilet paper and water. It caused the prices for all of it to skyrocket, and it led to a lot of people, like I'm telling you, a lot of people, including my own household, having extreme difficulty not even just trying to find water and toilet paper, but fucking diapers and wipes. Like, I'm not even kidding. So if you ration and you conserve, you're gonna allow the food shortages to dwindle as well, because the supply chain is going to be able to catch up with the demand. It's going to be able to catch up what it's lost, because you also have to remember there's an entire industry, an entire working class behind the toilet paper brand, behind the water brand. Who do you think is making the stuff? Where do you think the resources are being taken from? A lot of it be non-renewable resources, very limited resources, like toilet paper, for example, because we only have so many trees. And obviously that's a multi-dimensional topic to cover, because there's a lot of other factors that go in. But by rationing and conserving, you're going to limit the extent of the shortages. You're going to help improve it. You're going to allow the farmers, for example, the agricultural industry, the ones that are producing all of the food and supplies for us, you're going to allow them to catch up on their supplies. Because if us, the consumer, the demand is straining the supply chain, the agricultural industry, for example, how are they going to be able to meet with the demand? How are they going to be able to meet the demand under what budget they have, under what resources they have, when it is being strained so much? And you saw that also happen, for example, in Texas during the snowstorm. You saw resources become limited. You saw people panic buying. You saw people hoarding, and it creates a domino effect. And it's a really shitty thing too, because like at the end of the day, I could sit here and tell everybody ration, conserve as much as you want, but at the end of the day, everybody has their own individual right to say, okay, I'll do it, or fuck you, I won't do it, and that's okay. It's their right to do so. And again, it's a shitty thing, but we also can't impede or force others to abide by these things, because then you become the bully and you become the dictator. when you start to force people to abide these things and stuff like that. And obviously there are other factors that come into play with that, because there are some situations where it's not actually forcing, but that's where the debate and that's where the actual conversation comes in to understand and differentiate the difference between forcing somebody and just setting something right. But that's why, as a society, as a collective, the gas and food shortages is going to harm all of us. So how do we respond? Well, we all make the sacrifice to conserve and ration, so that way 3 months or 6 months from now, we all don't suffer worse and we're all in a better situation. And again, that's majoritarian politics. That's majoritarian thinking. If we all have to make the sacrifice now, then we all will benefit from it later. And we don't have to worry about too much government overreach. We don't have to worry about all this extra BS that can come into play. Because guess what? History has proven time and time again, it can and will happen. Because as you saw, like I was mentioning with the Arab oil embargo, you had Richard Nixon start to do price regulations on the gas prices. You saw him start to say, okay, you can only get gas on this day out of the week, and then on this other day, and stuff like that. Or between this time frame, you can only get in the morning. Oh, then you can only get in the afternoon. It's you create too many holes, too many issues. And so, as I just keep on saying with the Colonial Pipelines, what happened in the eastern states with the shortages, if they would have, rather than hoard and panic bought, if they would have rationed, conserved, and act responsibly and had some fucking common sense, then the people would have been better off. Yeah, but again, that will apply to like any future situations. If another cyber attack or just something else completely different, whether it's a natural disaster or something like that led to these issues that happened on the West Coast, the responsible thing for us all to do is to ration and conserve in order to benefit us all. But then to go ahead and move on to the next thing, which is going to talk more on like the questioning of the U.S. economy, and is it going down or is it going up? And the biggest concern that I wanted to address is inflation and the economic instability within the U.S. And I have my notes on the side, so I'm going off shit. But we're seeing, for example, with these stimulus checks and the stimulus packages and how much money is going out versus going back in, you're going to see an issue where there are issues where too much money in circulation can result in consumer demand exhausting supply chains. And if that happens, shortages can also occur as a result, and worse, resources become limited. When demand outweighs supplies, the value of the individual dollar drops and the cost of living increases. Interest rates, retirement savings, and investment spending can all be impacted by this. And those things, investment spending, interest rates, those can also affect the other way around. It's inflation, recession, all that stuff. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. So it's not just unidirectional or unilateral within regards to solely too much money in circulation, because there are a lot of factors that go into it, but it can't attribute to it. And oftentimes, too, inflation can also be a signal of a recession. But when you see so much money put into circulation, you're going to run the concern and the fear of devaluing the individual dollar. Well, what happens with that is you start to, when you devalue the dollar, basically what the money that you have now will become worth less, and the resources and the products that you need to acquire to sustain a healthy living will go up. So, like, for example, Germany after World War I, they got hit with such a horrible depression that their currency value was worth more as fire. Like, literally, history books, there were images where it showed families with massive wheelbarrows full of straight cash in the whatever the currency in Germany is called, and they were just using it as burning for fire. Now, obviously, that was during the time of the Depression, during world wars, and there's a lot more extreme things that happened back then. But you can't take away the lessons and the minute details that attribute back and forth. When you pump too much money into circulation, you run the risk of devaluing the individual dollar, and you can potentially harm the bottom line of the society. Typically, when the inflation occurs, the people that are on the short end of the stick is the middle and lower class. And it only increases the cost of living. So because so much money is put into circulation, it's going to start exacerbating the supply chains. In order for the supply chains to be able to accommodate it, they're going to have to raise prices to accommodate the demand. And then that's going to result in potentially the dollar devaluing, affecting interest rates, investment spending. And like one of the details that I had read in regards to that is when heavy inflation or hyperinflation occurs, your retirement savings and everything could go from something that'll set you for life to something that'll be absolutely worthless. So we have to watch how much money we pump into circulation and how things go, because you also see with the stimulus checks. The stimulus checks are great to help assist people and everything to allow them to catch up. But also, guess what? $1,200 isn't going to last people very long. It's a band-aid on a bigger issue. But there's only so much that they could do to help benefit us and so on. I don't know where I'm getting with that, so I'll just move on from it. But essentially, when you pump too much money into circulation, it'll harm us, the average Joe, the working class, stuff like that. So you run that risk there, and so that's another issue. And then another issue that I wanted to point out as well, which this one is a back and forth, because there is justification on both ends, but there's also flaws on both ends. And to say that there isn't is to plead ignorance. And this is in regards to the work shortage and the unemployment benefits and the whole controversy and debate that's happening around that. And start off first, let's start off by highlighting the April job gains, because that is a key point in regards to what I'm going to discuss in regards to unemployment and too much money being pumped into circulation and stuff like that. So for the April job gains, Biden and his team, as well as the experts, we're all saying, oh, hell yeah, we're expecting 1 million plus job gains in April, and then we could possibly see it go throughout the rest of the year. Well, April job gains came. That shit was short. They were expecting 1 million plus. There's only 266,000 jobs gained. That is only like 27% of what they actually considered. That's not even half of their goal. That's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. And there's a lot of conversation and topic about it that goes back and forth in regards to why there's so little. And a lot of it also pertains to people, the working class, are reevaluating what their career goals are and what they want in life, what they want to do job-wise. Because I was reading some things where it's like this guy, for example, he was a retail manager, but then lost his job as a result of the pandemic. And then is now, instead of getting forced back into the retail system where I had to deal with people that had fits about the mask, that were making so much more issues in regards to the pandemic, just stupid customer handlings and stuff like that. And so he wanted to go into a different field. And that's understandable. It's well justifiable, because a lot of people hate their fucking jobs. I hate my job. But there also comes to a question, okay, it's you're going down a different career path and you're pursuing that. What results are you gaining from it? And that's where the controversy and the issue stems from, the unemployment, because when you allow excessive unemployment benefits, it can disincentivize people from joining the workforce in order to continue collecting unemployment. But it could also give people that are currently working the incentive to purposely get fired or lose their job in some way in order to reap those unemployment benefits. And if you don't think that is possible, I'm sorry, but you're a fool if you don't think that's possible. As I was saying with the shortages, if you don't think it's possible for there to be people that's going to abuse unemployment, if you don't think it's possible for people that are going to take advantage to some extent, then you're dead wrong. There's a lot of gray areas that come into effect in regards to unemployment, but in regards to just welfare benefits as a whole. Example I'm going to use is the AFDC program, which the AFDC program is the Aid to Families with Dependent Children. It was a program that was originally created was originally a part of the Social Security Act of 1935. And the purpose of it was to provide aid to mothers whose husbands had either passed away, whether it was war or in a coal mine or any other reasons, or had divorced them. This program, which coincided with other already existing programs, provided AFDC recipients additional benefits such as food stamps, earned income tax credits, Medicaid, job training programs, free school meals, and housing assistance. So this is a welfare program during the 1900s that was to provide, that had pure intentions and only wanted to purely benefit the people who are suffering. And it originally started out as a non-controversial program. However, as years went by, negative of public opinion of AFDC rose dramatically, and there are multiple reasons why. And this is going to coincide to what I was saying in regards to unemployment and people taking advantage of it. So, starting off, the public disliked the program, and when I say public opinion and the public, this is referencing the data from public opinion during the AFDC program, which was from 1935 to 1996. So that's where the references and data is coming from in regards to public and public opinion. But the public disliked the AFDC program because they felt it weakened the family image by encouraging out-of-wedlock births, since AFDC recipients received additional benefits for every new child. There was data that did support this concern because there was an increased proportion of out-of-wedlock births in the country as a whole during this time. Public opinion also expressed concern that many of the recipients receiving benefits were secretly working on the side. This was also to be proved true, as the data showed at least half of all AFDC recipients in several large cities were working on the side. The demographic of AFDC recipients had also changed. In 1970, about half of the total mothers on AFDC were on it because their husband died or divorced them. Only a quarter had never married. By 1994, only about a quarter of mothers on AFDC were on it because their husband had died or divorced them. On the other hand, over half of mothers on AFDC during this time period had never married at all. So basically, that section in 1970, about half the mothers on it had lost their husband or divorced, and only a quarter of them had never been married at all. So they just had children out of wedlock. However, by 1994, so this is just within a 24-year gap, by 1994, only a quarter of mothers that were on AFDC had lost their husband or were divorced, and more than half of them were never married at all. And then, while most women that had gotten on the program for the first time had gotten off of it after just a few years, because this is supposed to be a temporary relief program to get the family back up on their feet, studies showed that at least 2/3 of women on the AFDC program at any given point had been on the program for over 8 years. There was also debate that the high welfare benefits from the AFDC program gave people more incentive to stay on welfare versus getting a job, which results in an increase of total people living in poverty. The controversy around this program became so bad that the program was abolished in 1996. And this was an especial shock to many politicians and private citizens, because as the saying goes in politics, it's easy to pass legislation, but it's damn near impossible to stop it. And so we have this. This is historical records. This is historical, factual data from our history, stemming from the Social Security Act in 1935 all the way to 1996, where it began coinciding with the TNFA. And you see with AFDC, it had pure intentions to provide benefit to mothers who had lost their husbands, whether it was dying or divorced, and it was solely on them to be able to take care of the children in the household. Pure intentions, and it was to benefit them. And we can all agree that's a good thing, because obviously we don't want anybody to suffer like that, because that's only going to have a negative and harmful long-term impact, not only on the mother but on the children as well, and it's going to create a lot of problems from it. However, it's unfortunate that there's enough people out there that ruins the program for the good people. And what I mean by that is, it's exactly how it comes across. There is enough bad people that are willing to manipulate and abuse the system to collect the benefits, that it ruins it for all the good people. And that's the problem. And that's a societal issue. That's something that the government can't fix without impeding on our rights and worsening the situation. But tying in with unemployment, there's a lot of people as a result of the pandemic that do need it. But then there are other situations where there are genuine people who take advantage of the system in order to reap the benefits. And there's one thing I want to make clear is that there's a lot of gray area in it too. A lot of gray area. Because when it comes to the unemployment benefits, and this references back to the AFTC program, there's a lot, it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray area because there's the people that are willing to abuse the system to reap the benefits. That can create a chain effect where it decentivizes the people who are trying to do good and stay right. It decentivizes them to stay that route. When, for example, you work 50, 60-hour weeks doing manual labor, whether you're a landscaper or anything like that, and you get paid, say, $2,000 a month. Well, if you look at somebody else who's on unemployment and that is in fact abusing the system, and you see them collecting, if not $2,000 or more, isn't that gonna just make you not want to work? Because it's like, bro, I'm busting my ass off. I'm sweating. I'm shedding blood, sweat, and tears to just be able to make a living and to provide for myself and my family. Yet somebody who isn't working is making more than me. It sucks. It sucks. And that's where one part of the issue with unemployment right now comes into play. Now, the other side of it, which circles back to what I was talking before, is that there's also a lot of people, for example, that got laid off or fired or end up quitting during the pandemic because of all the bullshit that came with it. And they're reevaluating their career choices. So they're either going back to school to specialize in a different market industry, or they're just simply trying to find a job in a different market industry altogether. So that's why you've seen call center work also hit a spike too, because there's more of a demand for it. And that's completely understandable. I respect that 100%, because at the end of the day, who the fuck wants to work their job? If I had a choice between a job and a career that I loved, I would choose the career that I love because it's what I want to do and something I'd be passionate about. And that's completely understandable to the people, for example, currently on unemployment that are using this opportunity to be able to pursue that so they have a better living. That's part of what the AFDC program was. That's why they offered job training program, housing assistance and everything, because the single mothers, they had to be able to work towards having a sustainable living, not only for themselves, but for their kids as well. So for the people that are currently on unemployment that are using it to seek a better living, you got to respect that. That's where the gray area within this whole controversy comes into play, because there is truth to that too. And if you deny that, I'm sorry, but you're an idiot, because it's speaking from personal experience of not being satisfied with ever working at a job. Because I've worked at Lowe's, I worked at other places too. I have done manual labor, landscaping, and stuff like that, and it's a very hard job. And I give credit to the people that stick to it and stick to the grind, because that takes a lot of dedication, a lot of grit and toughness to be able to get through that and to be able to handle it. But that's why you're seeing so much controversy and back and forth. And this, I'm going to refer to a philosophical term. It's called anarchic truth. And the anarchic truth, this was actually, the term was coined by one of the very first Greek philosophers, one of the first female philosophers, and I don't remember her name, but she existed during the same time as Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. But because she was a woman during that time, she was washed out a lot of history, which sucked. But she came across a pretty good term, and it's called anarchic truth, and it's basically saying that there's more than just one truth. And to go ahead and use an example with the unemployment, the first truth is, yes, there are people that are abusing the system for their own selfish gains and are not working towards improving themselves or getting off of it. That is true. AFDC program proves that as a historical data point to support that truth. Truth number two There's also people currently on unemployment that are using the opportunity to pursue a better life, whether because they had a really shitty job before and got fired or quit as a result of the pandemic and they're currently on unemployment, but now they're using this time to go back to school or to get HVAC training or to pursue a career. That's a second truth. That is the other side of the argument and everything with it. A third truth is that too much unemployment benefits can also decentivize people from working. Too much unemployment benefits, excessive unemployment benefits, can encourage more poverty as well. That is a third truth. Because if you're working 40 or 80 hours a week, but just barely scraping by to be able to put food on your table for your children, and I have my own personal experiences with that growing up in poverty. When you have that and you're suffering like that, but you see other people collecting so much unemployment benefits, and it incentivizes you to find a way out of the current job and to get the unemployment benefits. That's the third truth. And that's why it shows that there's a strong gray area in this. And it's a really difficult thing to handle because there's understanding for a lot of it too. Obviously, there ain't going to be no understanding for the people who are genuinely just being lazy as fuck and just collecting the unemployment benefits, the couch potatoes who will do nothing, who will not work a job the day in their lives and just let other people take care of them. There are those people that are abusing the unemployment system right now. Guarantee it. And it really sucks too because it takes away from all the good people that are actually on it as well, because there's still the other people that are using it as an opportunity to either get their job back or to find a better job so they could pursue what we were born with, and that was our constitutional rights, the right to live freely and wholeheartedly and the pursuit of happiness. So they're using this time also as that, and that's why you can't necessarily, I don't know what I was getting with that, but that's why there's such a gray area with it as a whole. And then there's the people as well are busting their ass doing landscaping, manual labor, doing all this extra shit and all these trade jobs and everything, that are seeing the truly lazy people, the truly lazy people are taking advantage of the system, seeing them abused it and see them get more money than the ones that are actually working, and it decentivizes people from working because it's all like, well, fuck, I could barely take care of myself as is, busting my ass to do everything that I can to make sure I got food on the table. Yet there's people on unemployment that is just reaping the benefits and not having to put any work in. So that's what everybody now really needs to consider. And it's a hard thing to siphon through all of that stuff too, because with the welfare benefits and welfare systems, there's always going to be there to abuse it, since we have seen that historically with the AFDC program. And obviously you can't go after everyone, you can't just arrest all of them, because that's political suicide right there. Because first off, I guarantee you there are potentially hundreds of thousands of people that are just simply abusing the system. Right, I could be wrong in that figure. That could be a little too excessive. But the point is that there are plenty of people all across the U.S. that is abusing the system. But then there's also plenty of people across the entire U.S. that are using it as a stepping stone to move towards something greater, as a temporary thing. And there's just so much gray area. You can't go around and accuse of the fraud and all this shit and stuff like that without committing political suicide, because at that point you're going to be seeing mass arrests, you're going to be seeing a lot of shit happen, and you're going to really upset the American people at that point. But it's just, oh yeah, so it's, and to circle back to something that I was referencing in regards to the AFDC program and stuff like that, is the AFDC program was abolished in 1996 because the program was so controversial, was so tainted, and became so obscured that they had to cut it out entirely. And to an extent, something like this, my personal opinion, something like this should happen to an extent with unemployment now. There shouldn't be so much excessive unemployment benefits to the point that it's pumping too much money in circulation and resulting in inflation. You pump in too much money, or you pumping in too much unemployment benefits, you're also going to lead to the work shortage as well, because there are going to be less people that want to work and just take the free money. But it's fucking brain fart. Oh my god, I have such a brain fart. Oh yeah, okay. So, and like, it's so another example of it, like, there's good people within the unemployment system, but there are bad people that are ruining it for them. When I worked at Lowe's, there would be like specific things like it was like those little build kits before Lowe's stopped doing the program. But Lowe's, they had like build kits where families could come in, build like little things together and have fun together. And oftentimes too, there would be extra kits that were just could be given out. Well, if they're parents that had just missed the building session, but they really wanted to do it, we would give one out to them and be like, "Oh my God, thank you so much, thank you so much." They got to do it with their kids and everything. It was a great thing. However, there are also people that would go in and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot it. Can I have one, please? I just want to do it for my kid. Oh, thank you so much. And can I have another one? I got 2 kids. They would want another one. Oh my God, thank you so much. Oh, my neighbor, he also missed it too. Can I have one for them too? Oh my God, thank you so much." I'm saying that off of firsthand experience of actually being on the other end of that, of having to give those to people who are clearly taking advantage of it. So it's like it used to give out the free build kits to the parents that genuinely did miss it and just want to be able to do it. But then there were also parents or just random people that would come in and ask for the build kits, ask for multiple of them, and then either sell it off or just hoard it or whatever. And hoarding, actually, yeah, they would just hoard it or they would just sell them. And because it got so bad, we had to stop giving them out, period, because of that. It was because there were so many bad people that were ruining it for the good people. We were not able to continue handing them out the extras for free. And that pertains to the same way to unemployment and to the AFTC program. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people within the unemployment system that are genuinely taking advantage of it, that are staying on it for several years instead of using it either as a stepping stone to find a new job or a better job, or just simply getting off of it because it's a temporary solution. It is not a permanent solution. It is a temporary solution. But because you have those people that are exhausting the system and abusing the system, it is going to attribute to further issues of whether it's inflation or decentivizing the working class to actually work. It's going to ruin it for everybody else. And to an extent, that's why I feel there needs to be a better handling of unemployment itself. There has to be a limit to how much unemployment benefits there are, because if you allow too much benefits, then they're not going to want to go back to work anyways, period. It's like, oh my God, I'm collecting $2,500 a month off of unemployment benefits. Back in my old job, I was only collecting $1,500, and that's the only type of job that I could find now, something else that also pays $1,500 a month. Why should I get off of it? So you have to limit the benefits so it doesn't disincentivize people from rejoining the workforce or incentivize people quitting or getting fired to collect the benefits. You limit it so that way you could regulate that from happening. So that way you could regulate what's happening to the people that are abusing the system to provide more concrete and foundational benefit to the people who genuinely need it. And to some extent, unfortunately, there will be good people within it that are going to take a blow from it as well, because that's what happened with the AFDC program. There were a lot of good mothers on there that were a part of it as well that had the program taken away from them, and they went into alternative solutions and other programs as well, such as TNFA, to be able to help them out. But that's just an example. So we have to, as a society, we have to stop pleading ignorance and acknowledge both sides of the spectrum in regards to what's happening on unemployment. One, there are people that are abusing the system that shouldn't be on unemployment, that needs to get a job. Two, there are people that are using the employment because they had lost their job and they're trying to use it to better themselves through education or through a better career. And 3, offering too much unemployment benefits is going to incentivize currently working class people who are trying to do good, or currently working class people who are inherently bad, to go ahead and give up on that aspect and just go to collect the benefits. So it's a whole mess. It's a big old jumble of things and everything. And I admit wholeheartedly that I could be entirely wrong and just be speaking out of my ass this entire time. I don't have a degree. I'm not an expert in this shit and everything. But as you can see, I do a lot of reading. I do my best to understand. I do my best to educate myself. And obviously there are going to be flaws in that. So I'm always open to criticism. I'm 100% open to being proved wrong on things. It's part of the human experience. It's part of being human is to be proved wrong. But it's based off the rational thinking that I do, based off the logical thought process and what information I look for and what information I find, is what I am basing all of this off of, is what I base my thought process on, that there has to be a limit to the unemployment benefits. Because you see a historical reference with the AFTC program where it got abused to an extent that it became so controversial that it was one of very few legislative pieces that has been abolished. Very few. As I said, because once you introduce legislation, interest groups and client politics will form around it, potentially more majoritarian politics. Once that stuff is tied to it, to try to take it down is damn near impossible, because you're going to have those interest groups, majoritarian politics, trying to keep it from being abolished. Yeah, but to go ahead and just circle back and to answer the question of the title, is the U.S. economy tanking? Yes and no. Yes, if we continue the route of our society being selfish in the extent of their hoarding and panic buying and their abuse in the unemployment system, the more that do those things, yes, it is going to further deteriorate our U.S. economy and make things worse for everyone as a whole. At the same time, no, because there's still plenty of opportunity now and plenty of incentive now to be able to turn that around before there is too much irreversible damage. But we got to figure that out. How do you figure that out? Have productive conversation. Figure out what is right, what is wrong. Be able to address both sides of the argument. Stop looking at one side and saying fuck you to the other. That defeats the purpose of what America is. But yeah. Yeah. Anyways, I think I've been rambling on too long. Some things I forgot to talk about in the beginning as well. I probably should have addressed. Sorry for the delay on putting out this episode and the gap between the previous episode. I did actually, my previous laptop just completely tanked, and I lost a lot of shit on there. I had an episode recorded, an hour and a half long one, recorded where I was talking with my friend who's also an MMA fighter. We're talking about fights. I had that get completely just taken out because of my laptop going down, so had to acquire a new one and just figure out a whole bunch of shit and everything. But otherwise, also with the Quarantino challenge, I'm still doing that. Thinking about it now, for that episode that I did with my friend that didn't go through, I did actually do like a little 10-minute beginning thing where I was talking about what I learned with the Quarantino challenge so far. It felt too robotic with it, and I just felt like the updating the Quarantino challenge in the middle of the podcast or at the beginning of it doesn't really work so well. So I think what I'm gonna do in regards to it is almost like a vlog series. I don't know definitive if I will do that, just because I have to be able to figure out if I have time to do that. But essentially what I was thinking about doing is that I'll do like a 5 to 10 minute video. It'd be part of a long vlog series where I'm just doing updates on the Quarantino challenge and things that I've done for it, or things that I've learned for it and whatnot. Anything else? No, I think that should actually be it. So pretty much covered everything. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Truly do appreciate it. I hope I provided some value to the guys. I hope you guys actually learned something. And I hope I didn't offend you too much. But yeah, again, thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. I love you all. If you're not already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscription button. So that way you get updates on future videos. And so you could also eventually see me do the Ghost Pepper Challenge or anything else, you know. Again, 100 subscribers. Let's go. If I get 100 subs, I'm going to do the Ghost Pepper Challenge. It's going to suck. It's going to suck, but I'll do it. Anyways, thank you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.